organisation. So our next speaker is Mick Crouch, who's a business analyst with the Digital Sustainability Program, and he's going to be talking about tips for managing digital records.
Thank you, friends, colleagues, former colleagues, and friends. Gosh, I hope nobody asks me questions about sentencing. I'll be lost. I work in the Digital Sustainability Program now, which used to be known as Digital Preservation, which used to be known as the Digital Futures. And we have exciting news. This is going to be more of an overview of what it is we're working on and how it can affect you. I apologize for some of the words that are being used. Things like digital and electronic and legacy and E and I and things like that get used quite a lot, and it's kind of jargony and stuff like that. But we really haven't developed the language yet to describe these things in a better way. This is what I'm going to be talking about for the next, thanks Tom, 20 minutes. I understand also that right after this is coffee and cookies, and you're all going to be very excited about coffee and cookies, so I won't go too long. I'm going to talk to you about what the Digital Sustainability Program is doing, a very brief and overview of the digital continuity strategy. Really won't do that justice at all. I have news about the Digital Archive, some fun facts and figures, and, well, as it says. The Digital Sustainability Program does lots of things. I'm not going to go into all of them. One of the things that we're going to be doing is the digital continuity strategy is being worked on right now. And are you going to be talking about that, Evelyn? Okay, so I won't go into that too much. Plus, I couldn't do it justice. Legacy and e-legacy record programs. Here's one of those problems again. Tom has talked to us about the Legacy Records program, and one of the things he didn't talk about too much is that the Legacy program was focused primarily on paper because, again, there's a lot more old paper than a lot more old electronic stuff. But the methodology that we've been developing should hopefully work for legacy, e-legacy stuff, electronic records and things like that just as well. As John alluded to, 25 years is not necessarily a good benchmark for electronic stuff because there wasn't as much stuff in 1983 as there is now, and things go bad quicker. 25-year-old paper is still readable, 25-year-old electronic files are not so much. And then I think I'll just talk about it right now. One of the other things that we're talking about right in my department is the digital archaeology. Once again, there's that word digital. But the word archaeology is fun, and we like flashy titles, and it makes us all think of Indiana Jones. And it's an opportunity for us to, within archives, to start looking at the electronic records that we now hold that we want to be able to preserve and give better access to. I'll go more into that as appropriate, but it's kind of a fun thing. It's one of my little pet projects. And we're using the same sort of collaborative methodology for working on the project that Tom alluded to with the legacy stuff. That is to say, getting a cross-section of people at archives who know what we have and know what to do with them, get a nice consensus, or at least that's the plan. The digital continuity strategy is something that we're working on right now. It's an all-of-government strategy that will be dealing with electronic records as a whole, not just your records or the records that we have, but a way for all of New Zealand government to deal with them. And it's a holistic approach. It's an ongoing approach. It's taking a step back and thinking about the fact that we live in a digital age and what can we do about it. I'm not going to read these to you. Let's see, which one was it? The second bullet point, authentic and reliable. There should be a lot of buzzwords in there for those of you who are fans of ISO 15489. It's the last one, the do nothing, lose everything, which is really the focus of my talk today. like I said, paper, if you leave it alone, will, for the most part, endure. Electronic records, however, if you leave them alone, they get left behind. You stop being able to access them and use them. The knowledge about how they were created and things like that is not obvious, and we won't be able to look at them. It's peculiar to, I would say, the last 25 years. I think in the next 25 years, there's going to be a lot more stability within the electronic record world. So this, the beginning of the digital electronic age is going to be a really interesting period to look back on for 100 years from now. But we do have an interesting problem facing us right now, that we have records which will go away quicker if we ignore them. Part of our solution, and one of the things that we're proudest of in digital sustainability, is the creation of our interim digital archive. Ba-bum. Which we launched on July 1st with poppers. It's a fully functioning digital archive. That is to say, we can put stuff into it and preserve it. It is not the ongoing solution. We are looking for something bigger and more robust, something that will last hundreds of years. But it's pretty darn good for what we've got. It's a very simple piece of software. It's a Fedora. It's not a version of Linux. It's a database which sits on a server with a bunch of hard drives and takes in files. It can take in just about anything. It can take in Word documents. It can take in Excel documents. It can take in motion pictures and databases and all sorts of stuff, and then keep them and preserve them and put information around them. Fez is a front end developed by the University of Queensland, which is just the front end. It's just a bit of technology to allow us access to the things that are in it. It's actually pretty clunky. It's great for the University of Queensland. We were able to change it, but they are a university, so all of the set fields say things like class name, student ID number, things like that. So we had to get rid of all that. The interim digital archive will allow us to manage documents, protect them, and do all sorts of things with them. One of the things that, well, there's a couple of key things. As we ingest the files into the interim digital archive, we need to know what it is that we're putting in. We need to know whether it's a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, that sort of thing. And so the tools that we have hooked up to the interim digital archive extract that information automatically. The next thing that we want it to be able to do is preserve it, and that's where that word normalize comes in. Word works fine for us now. Will it always work for us? Will we be able to access things made in Word forever? Normalization is the process of taking that information and putting it into another format, transforming it, as it were, into something which will endure. One of the important things about the digital archive as well is that there is no public access. Those of you who are thinking about transferring stuff to us and are worried about security and things like that, do not fear. Not only can it not be accessed on the internet, most people at Archives New Zealand can't access it. I cannot do a live demo of the interim digital archive because I am in the National Library. But this is what it would look like if you were sitting in a desk at Archives. It's got a lovely green color. It's one of our corporate colors. That's what the main page looks like. It's very simple. I mean, it's a very complicated thing to develop that once you make it, it ends up being fairly easy. You know, that's not a lot of information. But let me show you the heart of it. That is to say, what a file within it looks like. This is a record. You can tell because it says record. In this case, it's an Excel spreadsheet. And I really wish you could see these things clearer. But on the left side, underneath where it says Record Group Completion Checklist, there's 5 options. One is the archival version, which is the original ingested file, in this case an Excel spreadsheet. A downloaded archival package, which is an XML package, a little zip file that has not only the the original document plus metadata about it, that is to say, the information, its ID number, and when it was ingested, things like that. There's a normalized version. We are, at this point, normalizing things into ODF, which is the Open Document Format. Some of the machines that we have OpenOffice in it, installed on it so that we can look at these things as it's been transformed. If I can't read this, there's no way you can read it. View the Xena XML version and view a PDF. So we're actually doing quite a bit to these files. We're opening them, we're examining them, we're saving them as two different formats. Again, this is a learning process for us. On the right-hand side, there's metadata about it. There's the archival details, that is to say, the series and accession and codes and things like that. There's the preservation metadata, which is the information about how it was brought into the system, and then there's the record-keeping details as well, which is the information we get from you folks. We did learn some things doing this process. We've taken in one trial transfer from an agency who was kind enough to let us look at some of their stuff. Where's Kathy? Kathy? Okay, I don't know the numbers here, Kathy. How many records did we get? 27,000 Word documents over a 15-year period, so from Word 2003 and 2007 all the way down to like Word 5. And the ingest process, that is to say, taking the record-keeping information and all of the format information and normalizing them into two formats took how many days? 20 days. And that's just hard churning. That's one machine doing nothing for 20 days except for opening these documents and looking at them. And that's why we have a picture of a snail there. In reality, that doesn't make much of a difference. If we're going to be preserving these files for hundreds of years, the fact that it took 20 days to ingest these 25,000 records, whatever it was, it doesn't matter so much. You know, it's low priority stuff. You can just turn in the background. We're quite happy with that. The other couple of things that we learned is that the format recognition bit, the tools that exist that are kind of the holy grail of digital preservation, Xena and Droid and Job and things like that, don't work quite as well as we'd hope. They work kind of good. They work great on some things, but there's a lot of work to be done, and we, the practitioners of digital preservation, are going to need to start being more active in that community to figure out what we can do about getting those tools to work a little better. Also, one little funny thing we discovered is that some of the records that we had sent to us, the track changes feature was turned on in the Word documents, and then the changes were not saved. So when they were imported, we could see the changes that were there. We didn't expect that. And then it did funny things to the ODF and PDF versions of the files. So, I don't know what that means necessarily, just like one of the funny things you don't know until you try something. I want to be like the rest of my archives colleagues and mention something about the 2008 survey results. So here's my little slide on that. This is not a complete slice of the information. For those of you who are trying to add up those percentages to 100, it won't. Or at least I don't think it will. It was never meant to. This is, what I'm talking about here is what we're dealing with as a department, and when we're talking to agencies who have electronic records. Does your organization hold any records in a format that means you can no longer access them? And of course you do. What percentages? The first one, documents without appropriate titles or metadata, that would, I guess, be the information on shared drives, wouldn't it? You know, the wilderness of shared drives. Records that require computer software or hardware that is no longer available. Ouch. You know, stuff from 1983. You know, I mean, some people probably have systems that can read that stuff. Hopefully, though, and we'll get to this later on, that stuff's been migrated. Records stored on obsolete storage media. I tell you, that's more common than you know, and I'm not talking about weird, archaic things like reel-to-reel tapes or punch cards. Records stored using undocumented file formats. Again, that goes back to the idea of computer hardware or software that is no longer available. There are some strange proprietary bits of software out there that produce some pretty funny files. And then my favorite one was the none of these, 33%, which I'm not being flippant here. I think it's a new question. It's a new series of questions that people simply don't know. You know, they haven't thought about it. We're all at the beginning of this. Some of us are more at the beginning than others. But, you know, it's important for all of us to think about. So, what advice can I give you? What tips and tricks are there? Well, there aren't many tips and tricks. It's all good advice. What is legacy information? Well, Tom has a definition, and John has a definition, and the PRA has a definition. But in an electronic world, legacy information is stuff that is no longer current and needs some handling. That could be 7 years, that could be 10 years, that could be 2 years, it depends. And we can't tell you that. The PRA says 25 years, but you would know your business information better than we would. Migration strategies, again, going back to the previous slide, where I talk about obsolete storage media and computer hardware and software that's no longer available. If you have information which your organization is going to need on an ongoing basis in one system, and you feel like you're going to be moving away from that system, and I'm sure that that's not going to come as a surprise to anybody. These are major projects. What are you doing with that information? Which information are you taking with you, and which are you abandoning behind? Risk management. And forgive my lack of formatting, that should be 2 bullet points under risk management. And again, this gets back to the things I was saying at the very beginning, the do nothing, lose everything idea. You know, the information that you have for your migration, the stuff that you're going to be using, the stuff that you think has business value now, is going to be de facto less at risk because you need it and you're going to move it. But if you don't use it, then it becomes at risk because it becomes forgotten. Another thing that I touched on earlier, the idea of a common format. 25 years ago, the physical formats and the operating systems and the applications that existed tried to get information from an IBM PC that existed in 1983 onto an Apple II that existed in 1983, and you just couldn't. Nowadays, it's all pretty equal, isn't it? You can take a floppy and put it anywhere. You have flash drives, you can put them anywhere. Everything exists on the web. It's all very migratable. We all use a certain Redmond, Washington product now to write our PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. So the ubiquitousness of our Office solutions means that there's more support for the boat that we're all in together, which means there's going to be more solutions ongoing to figure out a way to preserve all the information that's made. If you decide that you are going to migrate your stuff away from a format that you are currently using, or you think that this stuff is no longer current, we want to archive it, but we still want access to it, and we want to make sure it's in a format that we want to use forever, there are things you can do. There's a version of PDF called PDF-A, which stands for the archival version. There are Office document standards. There's ODF, which is supported by OpenOffice and other suites. Microsoft tried to create one with OOXML. So there are preservation and migration strategies that you can look into for that sort of stuff. One of the earlier questions was electronic documents don't have appropriate titles or metadata. That is to say, the information of the context in which they were created and the information about that has been lost. I can't stress this enough. The information about those files, you know more about them today than you will tomorrow. The people who are in your organization who saw them created or have used them know more about them now than when they leave and go to another organization. It's really important to capture that information. I don't have to tell you that because, this is what you do for a living, but have a system in place. And I'm not talking about an electronic system, I'm talking about a system of record keeping, of making prudent business decisions and create and maintain standard and all that stuff that should be right on the tip of your tongues right now. But know your metadata. We have a metadata standard coming in for stuff going forward. A lot of that good wisdom can be used to stuff going back. And then my last piece of advice for you all is that you are the records and managers and information professionals. You know metadata, you know the records, you know the businesses, you've all made your business classification schemes and done your functional analyses. You guys are the experts. Communicate that to your IT people. Make sure that they know what it is that you need them to do. Have them listen to you. They are your servants as much as anybody else. So if you make a good system, a good electronic system, make sure the metadata is in there. Ba-ba-da-ba. Rushing through this so we can have biscuits and coffee. That's a picture of a magic wand. At the end of this, I did find a great bit of information on the New South Wales page, which talked about electronic formats and electronic media and things like that. And so I put that on there so that when you go back to the slide later on, you can go and find it. They've done a lot of work on this stuff, and that's a great page to take a look at. That's kind of what I was going to talk about, rushed through, apologize. I would love to hear some questions. Tom, question?
It's Kerry Ford here from Department of Conservation. What is the public good of an interim archive that's not publicly accessible?
No. We have a lot of records at Archives New Zealand that aren't publicly accessible. There's a lot of things that have closed access and restricted access and things like that. There's a lot of things which sit in our buildings which will never see the light of day. So it's not that much of a contradiction. The digital archive does a lot of things. It's a preservation platform. It allows us to preserve things. It allows us to copy things, give access to things, preserve the life of things. So that's what a digital archive will do in general. The interim digital archive is a test bed. It's a place for us to learn these things, like how long it takes to ingest things, like learning about track changes and stuff like that. It helps us a great deal. And again, it goes back to, I didn't talk about digital archaeology too much, but we have a lot of records that have filtered through. One of my favorite examples, we get a folder transferred to us that is mostly paper. The last page will be a floppy disk stapled to the back of it. So we consider it to be primarily a paper record, but there is a hybrid digital component. What do we do with that? We can now take that, stick it into our digital archive, put the preservation and metadata on it, and provide access to it if it's appropriate. So the digital archive for us is really exciting because it allows us to start doing a whole bunch of things with the records that we have that we've never been able to do before. So it's very exciting for us. Hi, Evelyn.
The other point is that although the interim digital archive might not be online and directly publicly accessible, if there are records held in it that are accessible, then we will make those available through our other access services. What we're seeing with these systems internationally is that they're tending to look a little bit like the archival stack. It's the other systems that provide access, like the catalogue systems, and what we're aiming for is integration eventually.
Just to go on a little bit further, there's going to be kind of 3 different sets of things in there. There's going to be stuff that was transferred, that was born digital. There's going to be access copies of things. Our AV person is digitizing film and putting that and stuff in there. and then we're digitizing things to make them available. It all goes into the same place, and it's all managed the same way. And it just, I wasn't talking about those things. Sorry. These lights are bright.
I've come across an issue with electronic records, some of which ought to be transferred, archival, and some of which are not archival.
Mm-hmm.
And they get locked up in legacy systems where you can't separate one from the other. Have you got any strategies in place for dealing with that kind of thing?
That's an appraisal issue. Yeah. And I don't mean to sound flippant, but yeah, I mean, that's the same sort of issues that we would have with paper records and stuff like that. It's all about winnowing out the wheat from the chaff. There's a difference in that with paper records, you can kind of go through and separate the phone books from the stationery from the records. Hopefully, within a bunch of digital stuff, there will be some sort of aggregations as well. Hopefully, we'll find things that look like important records and copies of trash. If it's a hard drive with stuff, the stuff that looks like it's accounting records and it's more than 7 years old, it's past the GDA, that stuff can go. So, I mean, the same sort of appraisal tools apply, it's a different medium.
I'm not talking about appraisal. It's easy enough to decide what should be and what shouldn't be transferred. I'm talking about where you've got legacy electronic systems that have locked the records down in one great clump.
Right.
And you can't actually physically disentangle them. Do you have some ideas of how that might be managed? Are you going to have to transfer everything just for the sake of what's really important? Because this does happen, particularly with proprietary legatory stuff.
Yeah.
There is a lot of that about, and it's causing a lot of problems.
I think we'll burn that bridge when we cross it. I'm sorry, I mean, that sounds like a weak answer, and I apologize, but I mean, those are just exactly the kind of issues that we're trying to figure out. Hi, Douglas.
Yeah, it seems to me that the elephant in the room here is that 33% of agencies that have stuff in shared drives, poorly profiled, not much, if any, metadata around it. Are Archives got any plans for assisting agencies in profiling that stuff so that they can either dispose of it or ingest it into new systems? Tools to do so.
I've been told to say yes to that, Douglas. That's the other tricky one. Databases are huge. Legacy systems are huge. Messy shared drives are huge, and we really would have to deal with them on a case by case. Again, that's when I'm getting back to the idea that you know more about that system today than you will tomorrow. So the time to start thinking about it and dealing with it is as soon as possible, so we don't lose that information. We'll deal with it. It's ugly, but it's fun. Keeps us in business.
So we really have to